They smiled on stage, sang about love, loyalty, and the simple life. But behind the curtains, many country legends lived by a darker tune. Fame brought them fortune, but also arrogance, temper, and chaos that left a trail of broken friendships and furious fans. In this video, we'll pull back the velvet curtain and reveal 12 country music legends who were absolute jerks behind the scenes. The ones whose charm stopped where the spotlight ended. Hank Williams Jr., the rebel who crossed every line. For decades, Hank Williams Jr. built his brand on being the unapologetic outlaw of country music, a man who didn't care what anyone thought. The son of the legendary Hank Williams Sr., he inherited both extraordinary musical talent and a self-destructive streak. When Hank Jr. burst onto the scene in the late 1970s, fans saw him as the embodiment of Southern pride and raw authenticity. But behind the beer-soaked anthems and that rowdy charm, there was another side, one marked by anger, arrogance, and reckless behavior that often turned admiration into fear. Those who worked close to him described Hank Jr. as volatile, unpredictable, and quick to lash out when things didn't go his way. Crew members told stories of backstage tantrums where instruments were smashed and staff were cussed out for the smallest mistakes. He had little patience for journalists, often walking out mid-interview or hurling insults when questioned about his drinking or political views. Many insiders recall that his temper wasn't just a bad day habit, it was part of his persona. His backstage demeanor earned him a reputation as one of the most difficult acts in Nashville to work with. In the 1980s, Hank Jr.'s offstage troubles became public. Several bar fights, arrests, and outbursts during live shows painted a troubling picture. One infamous night, he drunkenly berated a fan for shouting a request, calling him too dumb to understand real country. Even his peers were not spared. Clashes with fellow artists and producers led to several broken collaborations. While the media often brushed it off as Hank being Hank, those who experienced his fury firsthand saw it as a pattern of bullying and unchecked ego. What made it more tragic was how deeply this contrasted with the music he wrote. Songs about pain, redemption, and the working man's soul. Fans loved the honesty in his lyrics, but had no idea how cruel he could be behind closed doors. Over time, his public image grew darker, especially after a series of controversial political rants that alienated both fans and industry peers. Today, Hank Williams Jr. still commands respect for his contribution to country music, but his legacy is stained by the chaos he left behind. He's a reminder that sometimes the line between rebellion and disrespect isn't just thin, it's completely erased. 2. Blake Shelton, the charmer who couldn't hide his cruel streak. Blake Shelton's rise from small-town Oklahoma boy to one of country music's biggest stars seemed like a fairy tale. His down-to-earth humor and easy smile made him a fan favorite on The Voice, while hits like Honeybee and God Gave Me You painted the image of a charming Southern gentleman. But as fame grew, so did a darker reputation, one that painted Shelton not as the lovable prankster he portrayed on TV, but as a man whose sarcasm often crossed into cruelty. Behind the cameras, many crew members and industry insiders describe Blake as moody, unpredictable, and sometimes downright mean. His tendency to drink heavily on set and backstage often fueled that side of him. Former production staffers have recalled how his jokes could turn cutting, humiliating contestants, mocking colleagues, and dismissing fans who criticized him online. What fans saw as playful banter on television, insiders saw as a defense mechanism, one laced with insecurity and ego. Blake's social media presence revealed more cracks in the facade. His Twitter feed once became a battlefield of insults, offensive jokes, and late-night drunken posts. He mocked fans, belittled critics, and occasionally made insensitive remarks that drew public outrage. Even after apologizing for some of his tweets, many felt his apologies were half-hearted, part of a calculated PR cleanup rather than genuine remorse. Those close to him say Blake often used humor to deflect accountability, a country boy mask to hide his inability to admit when he'd gone too far. His personal relationships also reflected that duality. His divorce from Miranda Lambert became a tabloid storm, with reports of jealousy, explosive fights, and cruel words exchanged behind the scenes. In the aftermath, Blake's charm was used as a weapon. He portrayed himself as the heartbroken victim while quietly ensuring that Miranda carried the brunt of the blame in the public eye. To some insiders, this manipulation cemented his reputation as a man who always knew how to control the narrative. Despite all this, Shelton remains one of Nashville's most bankable stars, a testament to how charisma can outshine controversy. Yet for those who have seen his temper and arrogance up close, the truth is clear. The friendly smile on camera hides a sharp tongue and a short fuse. In the end, Blake Shelton may be country's favorite comedian, but behind the laughter lies a streak of cruelty that even his biggest hits can't drown out. 3. Travis Tritt, the outlaw whose temper burned every bridge. Travis Tritt built his fame in the early 1990s as one of the outlaw revivalists, a country star who blended southern rock swagger with traditional country grit. With songs like Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares, and Trouble, he projected the image of a no-nonsense rebel, confident, bold, and unapologetically real. But that same defiant spirit that fueled his success also made him one of Nashville's most notoriously difficult personalities behind closed doors. Those who worked with Tritt often described a man who could be charming one minute and explosively hostile the next. His fiery temper became legendary within the industry. Crew members and fellow musicians recalled how rehearsals could quickly spiral into shouting matches over trivial mistakes. He demanded absolute control over every aspect of his shows, and anyone who dared question him, from sound engineers to record label executives, risked being publicly humiliated or abruptly fired. For Travis, confrontation wasn't a side effect of stress. It was almost a way of asserting dominance. His clashes with the press and peers became frequent headlines. Journalists who asked uncomfortable questions were met with sarcasm or outright hostility. One infamous radio interview ended abruptly when Tritt stormed out mid-conversation, later calling the host a wannabe cowboy on social media. He also developed a reputation for feuding with fellow artists, most famously with Billy Ray Cyrus, whose pop country hit Achy Breaky Heart Tritt mocked as a joke that embarrassed the genre. While fans initially laughed at the feud, many insiders saw it as proof of Travis's insecurity and his inability to share the spotlight. Alcohol didn't help. Numerous backstage stories describe nights when Tritt drank heavily, only to unleash tirades on his crew or perform angry, profanity-laced sets. Even those who respected his raw talent found it hard to work with him for long. One former tour manager admitted he could light up a stage or burn down a team, all in the same night. Ironically, Travis's greatest strength as a performer, his authenticity, was also his biggest weakness as a person. He lived exactly as he sang, loud, proud, and unwilling to bend for anyone. But over time, that pride turned toxic. Friendships faded, collaborations collapsed, and the industry quietly stepped back from the man once seen as country's wildest outlaw. Today, Tritt remains a respected voice musically, but his volatile legacy lingers, a reminder that sometimes the toughest cowboys are the hardest to stand beside. 4. Toby Keith, the patriot whose ego outshined his talent. For years, Toby Keith was celebrated as the all-American country hero, the blue-collar patriot who stood up for his beliefs, his country, and his fans. With smash hits like Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue and Beer for My Horses, he carved out an image of rugged masculinity and fearless pride. But while his songs made him a household name, those who worked behind the scenes saw a very different side of Toby Keith, one driven by ego, anger, and an obsession with control. Keith's career was built on the idea of authenticity, yet insiders often described him as one of the most self-centered stars in Nashville. He demanded to be the center of attention at all times, treating bandmates and production staff more like hired help than collaborators. According to former crew members, he was notorious for belittling others, especially when he'd been drinking, which was often. His temper could flare without warning, yelling at sound engineers, insulting journalists, or walking off stage mid-performance if something didn't go his way. One tour manager recalled a night when Toby berated a young stagehand in front of the entire crew because a mic stand wasn't placed to his liking. He didn't just want respect, he wanted everyone to fear him, the manager said. And that attitude extended beyond the stage. His reputation with reporters was equally harsh. Keith was infamous for cutting interviews short and throwing verbal punches when asked about controversies or rival artists. His long-running feud with the Dixie Chicks remains one of the most bitter in country history. What began as a difference in political opinion spiraled into a public war of insults, with Keith releasing mocking visuals and inflammatory comments that many felt went too far. While his defenders praised him for his boldness, others saw it as bullying disguised as patriotism. Behind closed doors, even some fellow artists admitted they avoided him, not out of disagreement, but out of exhaustion. Toby Keith's arrogance was matched only by his business drive. He ran his brand like an empire, making millions through his label and his restaurant chain. But success only amplified his belief that he could do no wrong. That confidence turned into condescension, alienating collaborators who once saw him as a mentor. In the end, Toby Keith's story isn't just about attitude, it's about how unchecked ego can warp even the most talented artist. He may have sung about honor and pride, but many who knew him best remember something else entirely. A man who mistook fear for respect. 5. Miranda Lambert, the country queen with a dangerous temper. Miranda Lambert has long been celebrated as one of Nashville's strongest female voices, fierce, unapologetic, and brutally honest in both her lyrics and her life. Songs like Gunpowder and Lead and Kerosene turned her into a symbol of female empowerment and independence. But behind the microphone and the award show smiles, Miranda's fiery nature wasn't just an act. It was a force that often erupted into chaos, leaving a trail of broken friendships, public scandals, and angry confrontations. Those who've worked with Miranda describe her as a perfectionist who doesn't tolerate mistakes. During rehearsals and tours, her temper became infamous. Crew members recall her screaming over minor sound issues or storming off stage during technical hiccups. One insider shared that Lambert could go from charming to cruel in seconds, smiling sweetly during meet and greets, then cursing out her team the moment cameras were off. For her, control wasn't just about professionalism, it was about power. Miranda's volatility extended far beyond her work life. Her relationships became public battlegrounds, especially her marriage and later divorce from Blake Shelton. Both stars accused each other of betrayal, but behind the headlines, Miranda's rage was legendary. Reports of thrown objects, shouting matches, and bar confrontations followed her wherever she went. Nashville insiders whispered about her bad drunk episodes, nights of fiery temper, and sharp words that even her closest friends couldn't calm. One incident in 2019 made headlines when Lambert got into a heated argument with another diner at a Nashville steakhouse, allegedly throwing salad at a woman after an exchange of insults. The story was dismissed by her representatives as overblown, but it fit a long-standing pattern. Her no-filter attitude, which fans admired in her music, often turned toxic in real life. She was known to call out exes, rivals, and even random critics in interviews and on social media, a move that earned applause from fans but raised eyebrows within the industry. Despite her undeniable talent, many insiders quietly admit they'd rather avoid working with her. Miranda doesn't just burn bridges, one former collaborator said. She blows them up and writes a hit song about it. That rawness is both her greatest weapon and her biggest weakness. The very fire that fuels her art also consumes the people around her. Today, Lambert remains one of country's most decorated and respected artists. Yet behind her success lies a reputation built not only on strength and independence, but on rage and recklessness. For all her talk about standing tall, some say Miranda's real battle has always been with herself. 6. Jason Aldean, the superstar who let arrogance take the stage. Jason Aldean rose to fame as one of the defining voices of modern country, a blend of Southern grit, stadium power, and mainstream polish. With hits like Dirt Road Anthem and Burnin' It Down, he became a symbol of the new country era, a man who could pack arenas and still claim small-town roots. But while his music spoke of loyalty and heart, the Jason Aldean that insiders knew off stage was often anything but humble. Behind his cool cowboy image was a man whose ego and attitude turned admiration into frustration. From the early years of his success, Aldean developed a reputation for being distant and dismissive with crew members. Those on his touring team described him as the boss who never said thank you. He rarely interacted with his staff unless something went wrong, and when it did, his anger was loud and public. If you messed up once, you were done, recalled one sound technician. He didn't believe in second chances, just blame. His arrogance wasn't limited to backstage behavior. Fans who had idolized him for his authenticity began to notice a coldness in his interactions. There were reports of Aldean brushing off meet-and-greet guests, refusing autographs, or mocking people who approached him in public. One viral moment came when he was caught on camera snapping at a fan who asked for a photo during dinner, muttering, "Can't I eat without being harassed?" It wasn't the only time he'd made his disdain for fan interruptions clear. Then came the scandals that revealed even more about his offstage life. In 2012, Aldean was photographed kissing another woman, former American Idol contestant Brittany Kerr, while still married to his high school sweetheart, Jessica Ussery. The affair exploded in the press, and although Aldean later married Kerr, the incident permanently cracked his wholesome image. Critics accused him of hypocrisy, singing about faith and family while living a very different reality. Over time, Aldean's defensiveness hardened into arrogance. He dismissed criticism with smug humor and doubled down when fans expressed disappointment. He stopped listening to anyone but himself, said one longtime associate. His refusal to take accountability, whether for personal controversies or tone-deaf social media posts, only added to his reputation as one of Nashville's most self-absorbed figures. Even after surviving the tragic 2017 Las Vegas shooting while performing on stage, a moment that could have deepened his humility, Aldean seemed unchanged. His interviews remained curt, his patience thin, and his circle smaller. For all his success, many say he lost touch with the soul that once made his music so relatable. Jason Aldean may still dominate the charts, but behind the sunglasses and swagger lies a star who forgot that fame doesn't excuse arrogance. It exposes it. 7. Kenny Chesney, the Island King, who forgot his roots. Kenny Chesney built an empire on beachside escapism, the easygoing, sun-soaked king of modern country. With hits like No Shoes, No Shirt, No Problems, and When the Sun Goes Down, he sold the image of a humble dreamer who traded Nashville's chaos for island peace. Fans saw him as a laid-back superstar, the guy everyone wanted to have a beer with. But according to those who worked closest to him, the good vibes-only lifestyle was more fiction than fact. Behind the scenes, Chesney could be cold, controlling, and shockingly dismissive toward the very people who helped build his brand. From early in his career, Kenny ran his tours with military precision. Every detail, from lighting angles to backstage schedules, had to pass through him, and anyone who questioned his authority risked being replaced. Crew members described an environment of tension rather than teamwork. It wasn't fun in paradise, one former staffer admitted. He'd smile for the crowd, then bark orders the moment he walked off stage. His perfectionism wasn't driven by artistry alone. It came with a belief that no one could match his standards. His attitude toward the media and fans also revealed a less flattering side. Interviews often painted him as short-tempered, impatient, and intolerant of personal questions, particularly after his short-lived marriage to Renee Zellweger ended in a storm of rumors. Instead of showing vulnerability, Chesney lashed out, accusing reporters of invading his privacy while privately mocking journalists and even fans for not understanding real country. Those who expected warmth and gratitude often left feeling dismissed. As his fame grew, so did his distance. Once known for his accessibility, Chesney became surrounded by a tight inner circle that acted as a buffer between him and the outside world. He rarely engaged with opening acts or local performers, and several rising country stars later admitted they'd been warned not to approach him unless spoken to first. He wanted to be the nice guy in public, one artist said, but behind the scenes it was clear who the boss was, and it wasn't friendly. Alcohol-fueled nights added to the tension. Insiders claimed Chesney's island lifestyle wasn't always mellow, that the same rum-soaked energy he celebrated in song often turned into arrogance after hours. Crew parties sometimes ended with angry tirades or sudden firings. To fans, Kenny Chesney remains a legend, the barefoot troubadour who turned escapism into an art form. But to many who stood in his shadow, the No Shoes Nation anthem hides a tougher truth. When the cameras go off and the beach lights fade, the Island King can be just as ruthless as any Nashville power player. 8. Faith Hill, the Southern belle with a sharp edge. Faith Hill was once country music's golden girl, the embodiment of elegance, talent, and grace. With her stunning looks, powerhouse voice, and hit songs like Breathe and This Kiss, she seemed untouchable, a living fairy tale of success and Southern charm. Her marriage to Tim McGraw only solidified the image. Nashville's royal couple, adored by fans and respected by peers. But behind the perfect photo shoots and polished interviews, Faith's reputation in the industry told a different story. One marked by control, jealousy, and bursts of temper that caught many off guard. Those who worked with Faith described her as a perfectionist to the point of intimidation. Rehearsals, photo shoots, and even meet and greets were micromanaged to fit her vision of flawlessness. She didn't want anything less than perfection, and she'd let you know it. Recalled one former tour assistant. Crew members often walked on eggshells around her, terrified of being the next to face her icy stare or cutting remarks. One insider put it bluntly, Faith Hill could light up a room with her smile or freeze it solid in an instant. Her anger sometimes spilled into public view. In 2006, after a fan grabbed Tim McGraw on stage during a concert, Faith famously lost her temper, scolding the woman in front of thousands. Many praised her for defending her husband, but those who knew her said it was part of a pattern, a possessive streak that occasionally turned explosive. She has a temper, one former band member said. Not the screaming, table-throwing kind, but the kind that cuts you down with words you won't forget. Behind closed doors, Faith's relationship with other female artists was also strained. Several rising country singers claimed she could be cold and dismissive, especially if she felt her spotlight was threatened. Rumors swirled for years about her clashes with fellow stars at award shows and her rumored refusal to perform alongside certain singers. Whether true or not, it contributed to a perception that Faith guarded her image and her throne fiercely. Her marriage, often hailed as perfect, wasn't immune to her controlling tendencies either. Insiders whispered about backstage arguments with Tim McGraw, where she reportedly took charge of decisions down to the smallest details of their joint tours. She was the boss, said a former tour manager. Tim was the face. Faith ran the show. Faith Hill's talent is unquestionable. Her voice helped redefine modern country, and her influence paved the way for a generation of women. Yet her legacy behind the scenes is more complicated. A portrait of a woman who demanded excellence at any cost, even if it meant leaving bruised egos in her wake. 9. Kid Rock, the loudmouth who thrived on chaos. Kid Rock has always blurred the line between country rebel and rock outlaw. With his blend of Southern swagger, political bravado, and unapologetic attitude, he turned himself into one of music's most polarizing figures. Songs like All Summer Long and Picture made him a crossover success, the rough-edged outsider who didn't care what anyone thought. But behind the self-proclaimed American badass persona lies a man whose off-stage behavior often crossed the line from rebellious to downright toxic. Those who have worked with Kid Rock describe an artist who feeds on confrontation. His temper, fueled by alcohol and ego, has led to countless backstage explosions and public scandals. You never knew which version of him you'd get, one tour member recalled. He could be the funniest guy in the room, or the most dangerous. Bar fights, hotel altercations, and onstage meltdowns became a recurring part of his reputation. For Kid Rock, chaos wasn't an accident. It was the brand. In interviews, he cultivated controversy like a weapon. When other artists bit their tongues, he went further, slamming politicians, mocking other celebrities, and throwing verbal grenades at anyone who dared criticize him. His live shows, while energetic, were notorious for profanity-laced rants that alienated as many fans as they entertained. One infamous incident in 2013 saw him hurling a beer bottle at a heckler mid-performance, a moment that summed up his approach to conflict. Aggression over grace. Even his relationships within the music community were fraught. He burned bridges with producers, promoters, and fellow artists who couldn't tolerate his unpredictable behavior. One Nashville executive once said, "Working with Kid Rock is like handling fireworks with a lighter in your hand. Sooner or later, it's going to blow." His ego often overshadowed his musicianship, and those around him quickly learned that challenging him was a losing battle. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of Kid Rock's personality is his refusal to take responsibility. every controversy, from his explosive comments about women and minorities to public drunken outbursts, was brushed off as freedom of speech or just being real. He turned arrogance into a political statement, claiming authenticity while dismissing any form of accountability. To his most loyal fans, this made him a truth teller. To everyone else, it made him a bully. Today, Kid Rock remains defiant, performing for a fiercely loyal base that idolizes his no apologies attitude. Yet behind that bravado lies a man who mistakes hostility for honesty and rebellion for respect. He may still call himself the American badass, but to those who have seen him off stage, he's something else entirely, a cautionary tale of how fame can turn raw energy into destructive arrogance. 10. LeAnn Rimes, the prodigy who let fame poison her grace. LeAnn Rimes was once the darling of country music, a teenage phenomenon whose voice stunned Nashville and made the world believe she was the next Patsy Cline. At just 13, she became a star with Blue, a song that captured the innocence and soul of a bygone era. She had the voice, the looks, and the poise of an old soul in a young body. But as the spotlight grew hotter, that poise cracked. What began as youthful ambition evolved into control, ego, and a bitterness that left scars across her career and relationships. Those who've worked with Rimes paint a portrait of a perfectionist who demanded constant validation. Even as a teenager, she was known for clashes with producers, vocal coaches, and managers, often dismissing their input with the confidence of someone twice her age. Her meteoric rise only amplified the entitlement. Insiders recall that by her late teens, Rimes had become nearly impossible to work with. Moody, impatient, and distrustful of anyone who challenged her authority. Her feud with her father and former manager, Wilbur Rimes, exploded publicly when she sued him for allegedly taking millions from her earnings. The lawsuit, filed when she was just 16, shattered her America's sweetheart image. Though she eventually reconciled with him years later, the damage was done. Fans began to see LeAnn not as the innocent prodigy they'd fallen in love with, but as a volatile figure caught in endless personal drama. That pattern followed her into adulthood. In 2009, her affair with married actor Eddie Cibrian, while she was still married to backup dancer Dean Sharramet, sent her reputation into free fall. The scandal dominated headlines for months, with critics blasting her hypocrisy after years of promoting family values through her music. Her unapologetic attitude afterward, flaunting the relationship online and taking subtle jabs at Cibrian's ex-wife, only fueled the backlash. She loved the attention, good or bad, one insider said. If the spotlight was on her, she felt alive. Behind the scenes, colleagues described LeAnn as emotionally volatile and fiercely competitive. She often compared herself to other female artists, growing resentful when they succeeded where she didn't. Collaborators spoke of recording sessions that ended in tears or shouting matches. Her insecurities, hidden behind a facade of confidence, made her both demanding and exhausting to work with. Today, LeAnn Rimes continues to perform and has publicly spoken about her struggles with anxiety and fame. Yet many in Nashville still remember the chaos she brought wherever she went. A reminder that talent, no matter how extraordinary, can't always protect a person from themselves. Once the golden girl of country music, LeAnn's legacy remains a mix of brilliance and bitterness. The story of a voice that soared, even as the person behind it unraveled.